Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Art of Cybersecurity series with me, Chirag Joshi. Our today's episode is titled Art of Executive Leadership. And the person I have joining me for this conversation is someone who I highly respect as a leader. In my career, I've been fortunate to have met and worked with a lot of great leaders, but I have no hesitation in saying that James Kent, who is going to be our guest, is amongst the top echelon of those leaders. So it's my absolute pleasure. Now, in terms of leadership, look, to the audience here, I don't have to say why leadership is important. Leadership is paramount to anything and everything we do, especially in these, fast-changing times in technology and cybersecurity. Think to steer our programs, steer our people, steer our efforts, prioritization, sequencing of the activities. You need strong leadership. You need visionary leadership that will help us stay ahead of the curve. At the same time, bring people along and empower them to have great teams, which then contribute to a high-performing culture. So all of these things are very close to my heart, which is why this is a topic really important and for something for us to discuss. So James Kent, who has joined us. James, you have done so many great things. Just for the audience, I know James has been as a technology executive for several years now. In multiple different organizations. They include AMP, they include Macquarie, Deutsche Bank, amongst others. So, big time movement in financial services always, and James has been leading the charge on several funds there. So, James, so grateful to have you join us today. It is such an honor to have you on the show. So I gave the audience just a super high level brief about yourself, but I would love for you to give the audience a little bit about you.
Thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, as you said, I've been so fortunate in my career. I've worked for some wonderful organisations. I actually started my career at Anderson Consulting, or obviously now Accenture, which was a fantastic place as a grad to start a technology career. Wide variety of programs, different client groups, and a really strong methodology in terms of how to deliver change. And for me, I look back at that time as an absolute foundation of my technology career and more recently my leadership career, in terms of learning from really strong people who are great leaders and put clients in the center of what they do. As you said, I've been really fortunate to work with a number of great financial services organizations. Deutsche Bank, where I was the head of technology for Deutsche Asset Management here in Australia. I then spent nearly a decade at Macquarie, working in a number of roles, including as the division director for technology for the Macquarie Funds Group. And for the past 8 years, I've been at AMP, working in a variety of different leadership roles, including as the CTO for the Australian business, and more recently in my present role as CTO for AMP Capital.
Yeah. Now, look, James, I mean, it's so much great experience. And I have to say, James, you cracked the magic code in my view. You are one of those executives who everybody likes. Just nobody who James has led or has worked with will say anything negative about James. So, I mean, that's just an amazing accomplishment in its own right, to be so universally liked, admired, while being effective in your role. Like, people can be liked but not be effective. I mean, you have cracked the magic code of being liked and effective all at the same time. So maybe if I start off with that question, how do you, or rather, let me ask it, what are the attributes you think are key for effective leadership, especially when it comes to technology leadership?
Oh, it's a great question, isn't it? Again, I think, I look back in various times of my career and the people we get to work with, the different projects we get to work on, the different challenges we're asked to be part of. Again, this is why when we talk to grads and we talk to new people in the industry, or I talk to new people in the industry, it's just such a great industry to grow yourself and grow your leadership skills. Certainly for me, there are so many moving parts of our roles. It's you think through the different groups of stakeholders, the different relationships you have to have, both internal, external, with partners, with suppliers, etc., with the different role types in technology. Building an effective team is about making sure you've got capabilities across a whole range of different skills and getting the best out of those people. And one of the things I've always really tried to focus on is making sure we've got the right people in the right roles. and assigned to the right projects. So that's been really important as I've built teams and developed teams. And the other one, which is I do a lot of thinking about, is creating psychological safety across our stakeholder groups. So not just with our internal teams, but also with the people we work with, because as I mentioned before, successful technology teams and successful technology projects is about creating an ecosystem of people that contribute to that success.
Right.
So whether you're a project manager, a tester, a developer, one of our software suppliers, a consulting firm, or a specialist consultant that we get in to critique, etc. All of those people are at their most effective if, one, they know what the mission is. They're really clear on the mission and why they're there, and two, they actually know their role in that mission. And again, one of the things that I think about a lot with my teams is making sure that people genuinely understand their role in a team or their role in a project, because quite often people don't. People assume that they're doing X when actually you want them to do Y, or you'd need them to do Y. So for me, psychological safety is around people feeling like they can speak up, that they can ask questions, but at the same time, leaders giving them clarity of what the mission is, clarity of what good looks like, and clarity about what their contribution to that success is.
Yeah. Look, you so many great tips there. I mean, the whole concept of psychological safety and clarity. I think that's such a big one, because far too often, really talented people might not be successful if they are put in roles that don't, naturally are aligned to their talents or aspirations, or even if it is, they just don't have clarity of what good looks like. So I think those are some key points. And James, along those lines, as a technology executive yourself, uh, how do you define success? Like, how do you define success for yourself in your role? Like, what does that look like to you?
I'm a huge believer in what we build and what we change. It's about building something that's sustainable, that's going to pass the look back test in 12 months time, 2 years time, etc. There are many ways to deliver projects, and there's many ways to deliver change, and there's many ways to deliver new capability. There's crash through methods. There's many ways of doing it, as I said. There's some really bad ways of doing things. So to me, it comes back to, what is the mission? Like, why have we been asked to either do a role, or why have we been asked to do a particular project, or play a particular role in a project? And that, to me, is that genuine understanding of what the mission is, and keeping real focus on that mission, for me, defines success. So often I've seen through my career that if people aren't clear on the mission, and if they're not clear on their role in that mission and why they've been asked to play a particular role, that's where projects can come unstuck, where projects can run over budget, over time, etc. But for me, that that great phrase that I'm sure you've heard many times too, around clarity is kindness, which I love, providing that clarity to people, and keep revisiting and keep making sure projects evolve, things evolve, businesses evolve through the life cycle of projects too. So just keeping that clarity and that view of what the mission is, why you've been asked to do it, and what your role is, for me, above anything else, is how I think about success on technology and technology change programs.
Yeah, no, totally, completely agree there. I think, and it's and you see that a lot, even in cybersecurity now. Like, it's never ending. Like, the threats keep evolving. You see, sadly, the number of breaches always are rising. The nature of the technology change requires upskilling in people. So I think there is always that element of so much going on. But to your point, if folks are focused on defining their mission clearly, defining their objectives clearly, agreeing those with the people who lead them, and I think that to me allows you to focus. And to me, when it comes to cybersecurity, always advocated, be aligned to your business strategy, be aligned to what your business is performing in terms of how do they make money, how do they deliver services. And when you start with that, you contextualize your understanding of cyber threats. I think that to you then allows you to kind of build upon that with the risk language, the finance language, which then resonates. So I totally, I think the clarity bit is so important there. Well, James,
I mean, cyber is a great example at the moment, isn't it? And I'm so sure you know, in Australia, we've had two recent very high-profile incidents on high-profile organisations. And whilst I don't know the specific details, certainly looking at what's in the press, it looks like in both cases, relatively simple human error were at the source of some of those challenges. And so for me, the complexity of cyber and the complexity for a role like mine of how do I provide comfort to my stakeholders, that we have the appropriate cyber defenses in place, but probably more importantly, that we're evolving our cyber defenses to keep pace with what's happening out there in the Wild West. That's a real fascinating challenge, because I think we're up against incredibly well-funded, incredibly smart organizations or groups or people who do want to do harm to our customers. That's a real challenge. But again, one of my reflections in recent weeks over what we've seen is, in so many ways, it does come back to the basics. We often talk about around cyber about people are our best. Our people are our best line of defense. And again, I think that's one thing that I'm thinking a lot about in terms of how do I lead and develop and evolve our cyber capabilities, particularly with the threats that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's and to your point, the people bit is something, you and I have talked about this in the past. It's something I completely believe is heart of it. Cybersecurity is still fundamentally a human problem, not a technology issue. And I think kind of having that culture is so key to achieving what we need to do. James, you mentioned cyber. You mentioned the changes in landscape. When you look from your vantage point across the patch, there's so much changing also in the financial services industry when it comes to technology. If you had to kind of pick two or three drivers or key trends, rather, let me put it that way, that you foresee as being the catalyst for change or progress for a lot of organizations, what would they be from a technology perspective? And then what do you think are the threats to them from a cyber perspective?
I think if I look at my industry, and what we've seen, it's been going for a decade, but more recently, the digitization of customer interactions and then resultant business processes is like is the main game. What do our customers want? Our customers want great digital experiences. They want digital experiences that are easy to use, where they've got access to the data they need to do certain transactions or to provide certain insights and the like. And so the capabilities that organizations like mine build are all around that. They're about providing those fantastic digital capabilities. But the nature of that, of course, is as you bring your customers closer to your data, your core platforms and the like, how do you build them in a way that is conscious of the risk, that you're not opening up new risk, and as we've seen recently, not accidentally opening up new risk through whether it's the way you do testing, the way you use test data, the way you structure your network internally. All those things all play a role in terms of how businesses need to think about their digitization agenda. So for me, what we're building for our customers, those digital capabilities, those digital services, the ability to transact, fantastic customer experiences, but they need to be done in a way that we're meshing our cyber capabilities into that seamlessly. So it's both protects the customer, but also gives the customer those great experiences that they want, that will allow us to be competitive into the future.
Yeah. And James, so you touched upon a key theme there is, the digitization aspect of it, the customers and reducing the friction which is involved in them interacting with the products, the services, but that by if not designed properly, increases the threat surface. And when people have digital experiences, I think now the good thing is inherently there is an expectations from customers that my data will be kept safe, my transactions are protected, I'll be secure when I do business with an organization. So I mean, that is now like top of everyone's mind, especially in the aftermath of breaches. I mean, that is, if it wasn't already, it will become a competitive advantage that you can offer by being trusted, being secure. So I think that's really the key to me. So on that.
From a technology team and a technology department perspective, it's everything around your processes. It's your SDLC, it's your project methodology, it's the way you set up test environments, it's the way you manage test data. All of those aspects play a really critical role. As I said, as we bring our customers closer to our core platforms and where we store data, to create these great digital experiences, that's a real challenge from a non-prod non-prod protection as much as it is for prod protection.
Yes, and James, how do you kind of within your experience, how do you achieve that trade-off? Because sometimes the pace at which the business wants to move may not necessarily be supported by the pace which technology can move safely and reliably. And I think that, to me, sometimes you have to make like educated trade-offs and have those educated, informed conversations. What is your approach to them? Like, how have you gone about doing those conversations?
I think one of the seismic shifts I've seen through my career is, and if I take our two roles, for example, when we've worked together, 10, 15 years ago, we would have worked in the same project, but we would only have come together a couple of times in the project. You might have helped, for example, the cyber team might have helped design certain controls at the start of the project. You might have implemented them, tested them through, but the interaction through that project lifecycle, I think, would have been quite in just set episodes. I think today the way we're running projects is fundamentally different, and so the way we engage with our cyber teams, both our internal capability and our external partners, and I think I've used the word already, like that meshing of capability through the project lifecycle, through the way we set up our non-prod environments, the way we manage our non-prod environments, the way we manage our test data. It's that meshing of capability through the lifecycle of the project is the only way I think we can be successful anymore. So I think the relationship between, say a delivery team, a development team, a testing team, and a cyber team fundamentally looks different to, say, at least in my experience, how it looked 10, 15 years ago and the way we set projects up. So it's a very different structure, and I think it has to be that way going forward.
Yeah. And when it comes to educating our business executives, what are your kind of suggestions there, James? Like so how do you inspire confidence with business executives? If you're, say, a cybersecurity leader in an organization, and you want to inspire that confidence from your business executives, or technology executives, and leaders who trust that, okay, I've been given advice, and I should pay attention here. I should not tune this out. What are those things that cyber leaders and professionals should exhibit to get that buy-in?
Again, I think it's I think one of the things that one of those evolutions again I've seen in my career. If you roll back in time, we worked with business executives who were product savvy or business savvy. They then evolved to be technology savvy, and of the real interest in technology. Then we've seen the evolution to digital savvy, where we're working with business leaders who are driving the digital agenda and working with the technology functions to do that. What we're now seeing is cyber savvy executives, and I can hand on heart say that the executives I work with today, we talk a lot about stakeholder engagement and great communication, two-way communication, and building trust through that communication and the way you engage. But there is not a single meeting I have today with any of my executive peers or governance bodies that I report up to where cyber is not an active conversation. How can I protect my products? How can I protect my customers? What do we need to be doing differently? Have we got any gaps? How are we keeping up? Are we investing enough? That is an active conversation every time, not once every 6 months or an annual review. It is every time. So again, that evolution of the way our executives, partners think about cyber and think about digital, because I'm sort of bringing them, I think of them the same way, has fundamentally changed. And it's easier for us. It makes our jobs easier because of that knowledge and that real passion for it. But so yes, I think setting that tone, having those open conversations, and it's a two-way conversation around great digital experiences, protected digital experiences. And as I sort of talked about before, one of the things I'm working a lot on, with my stakeholder groups, it's not just about our production environment. It's about making sure that we are equally protecting, non-prod data stores, test data. The way, as I said, the way we think about the internal transfer of information and data as well is equally important. I'm doing a lot of work on that, so they understand the risks there and they understand the controls we have in place and why they're so important.
Yeah. And James, I mean, in your experience, I think because you kind of held so many of these senior roles, you also seen a fair amount of, mergers and acquisition or divestiture type activities, and those can be, by their definition, sometimes massive change to people who work on those, and massive change to technology, to cyber potentially. So along the theme of that executive leadership, what are the 2 or 3 tips you would give to technology or cyber professionals when they are in the midst of it, leading it, or supporting these kind of big M&A type activities? How would you suggest that people approach those?
I mean, it's a great question. The nature of most M&A deals results in IT projects where there's significant amounts of data moving around between organizations. And data, in all its forms, if you think about that, 2 big buckets: structured data, unstructured data, but then, going into the layers of that, moving that data from company A to company B, potentially on similar platforms, potentially on different platforms, potentially with different tool sets in how they think about it. And then, of course, potentially around different corporate governance regimes and around the way the organizations think around cyber and think around tech controls as well. So M&A activity for me, that data transfer and understanding that is critical. Building a program of controls, both from a tooling perspective, a process perspective, and coming back to your earlier point around a people perspective, is absolutely fundamental. And so for me, that's really important. So similar to what I described before around that meshing of capability in your project design, your project outcomes, and then giving people clarity on their role, exactly the same for me. So it's absolute. That meshing of your cyber controls, your cyber processes, your data governance processes, your data governance controls through the life cycle of an M&A deal is absolutely critical.
Yeah, no, fascinating. I mean, that data governance is such an important part of it. So absolutely, it's call out all is right, because data governance, without that, is hard to implement cyber if you don't know what data you have, how you classify it, how you store it, how you process it.
Yeah, and the nature of many M&A deals is it's a component of an organization going through that M&A. And so when so commingled data and the transition and transfer of commingled data and the governance around that, I think, is one of the biggest things to get right and to understand, and to make sure that the governance bodies, all the way up to board level, understand the risks and the controls around how that data is going to get untangled. And then transitioned, and then stored and used in the receiving organization.
Yeah, and James, those are like so many valuable nuggets there in terms of what the audience can benefit from when they start kind of finding themselves in this situation, or start to think about what they should be doing. So good stuff. And James, we talked about people, and I think I do want to ask the question, and I meant it when I said earlier that you are one of those, you crack the magic code of being effective and being liked. What is your approach, James, to building teams that are empowered, that are happy, that are finding purpose in their work? You mentioned clarity, but are there other things that we can offer, especially in this time when there is, a demand and a almost a really, strong need for talented, skilled people, and the market is struggling with that? How do you retain and find good people?
Yeah, I mean, certainly in Australia, we're still going through sort of the post-COVID era and some of the resourcing challenges it provided. In Australia, we saw, like many countries, the borders were closed, and that had a real significant impact on the amount of technology resources that were available, and a lot of the flex went out of the market. So, as I said earlier, I'm really passionate around the opportunities that a technology career can add to people. Ultimately, I think for almost everyone working in a tech role, we're problem solvers, and the nature of problem solving is it can be incredibly uplifting and incredibly rewarding when you're part of solving a problem. And so that clarity of role and clarity of purpose is absolutely critical to that. It's a genuine passion for solving problems, and certainly in the roles that I've had, solving problems that directly impact our customers. I can't think of anything more motivating than that type of work. And so for me, it's getting people into teams who love being problem solvers, who love feeling that they walk into a role on day one and they don't know all the answers, and they know they need to learn and improve themselves to be able to solve a particular problem. And then, like we mentioned earlier, that psychological safety in a team or a project to allow people to find their voice, to challenge, to learn. Because again, without that, it's very hard to be an effective problem solver and the like. And then ultimately, in all of our roles, it's building confidence, winning trust. You do that through great communication, through honest communication. You talk about the good things and the bad things, and you win that confidence and trust that way. And certainly in my experience, when stakeholders and executive teams and boards have confidence in their tech departments, in their cyber departments, etc., that's where you get the seat at the table. That's where you get a voice in the direction of work, of projects, of product development, of digital development, etc. And that for me is, again, just one of the great things about the career that we've all chosen to be part of.
Yeah, no, well said. I think that aspect of we're all problem solvers. I think that's how we've kind of ended up where we have, and that the joy you get, the inherent joy, and if supported with a good team. I think people, you cannot underestimate the importance of it to people's career choices and decisions that they make. So no, completely agree. James, I know, respectful of our time, just ending on this last question, which has been really something that I'm keen to get your perspective on. Like you've been really good at navigating change and managing change. But you've also been really good at reinventing yourself, staying ahead of the curve. So let's understand a little bit about, like, how do you keep up with all the changes? How do you kind of invest in your own personal growth and your own personal learning? And essentially, what has allowed you to be so successful over such a long period of time?
It's one of the words that I know we hear a lot in our roles, but being curious is, I think, is absolutely fundamental to growth. And certainly, again, if I think about, we talked a few times about the evolution of our industry and the evolution of the way we organize teams in our industry. That's required all of us to think differently and to change and be willing to change. If we were executing programs like we were 15 years ago with the current tools and technologies we have, there's no way we'd be as effective unless we'd evolved, unless we had changed. So for me, that's a huge part of it. The other thing is and I've mentioned a couple of times about why working in IT is such a rewarding opportunity. It is about challenging yourself and looking for opportunities to do things differently. Work on different projects, work on different products, work with different customer sets. So again, certainly encourage everyone as they develop their career and look for opportunities. It's not just about changing who your employer is. Quite often it's about an adjacent role within your current employer, looking for a different type of project or a different type of team to be part of. And that's hard. Like, a lot of people find it very hard to put their hand up and ask for something new. And certainly in my career, I've struggled with that many times, around feeling confident enough to say, I would like to do something different, or I'd like this opportunity. But again, I would encourage people to do that, because the joy of working in technology and building a career in technology is that it's the skills you build in a certain type of project are also going to be really effective, a different product set or a different customer group, as I said. So that it's being curious. It's it's knowing that we work in an industry that will continue to evolve, certainly through the lifetime of our careers. But it's having the courage to put yourself forward, ask for new things, look for new opportunities, even if you're not sure if it's going to be right for you. As I said, it's not just about changing employers. It's about growing within an organization, and of course, growing in different organizations as well.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, James, I want to extend massive thanks to you again for all these insights and for having giving us a time. I think it's been great to get your thoughts on so many of these critical topics. As we find all the changes, and they'll continue, to your point, they'll keep evolving at an unprecedented pace when it comes to technology and cyber. So really appreciate it, James. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chirag. My pleasure. Good to speak.